Thanks, Holly. I want to pay a tribute to Ron Draper, who was the education chairman of CBOCS for the last 4 or 5 years, and a really super great friend of mine. Whenever you needed something done, Ron was there. And it is so sad that he's not with us anymore, because I used to sit with him at the trail during the field trips, and he would regale me with some of his great stories and anecdotes. And he had more stories than all the rest of us put together. And I mean that for sure, all the rest of us put together. And he had such a great interest and passion for the educating of our students that he was there all the time, not only helping set up like we do, but he was there helping to teach. And it's going to be a real great loss for us that we don't have Ron Draper there anymore. So further along in the discussion today, we're going to say, okay, team, who's going to step into Ron's shoes, or what group is going to step into Ron's shoes, because I want to make sure that we continue on with our education program. Okay, so CBOCS is obviously the Chesapeake Beach Oyster Cultivation Society, and we'll go to the welcome and introduction slides, Holly. And Holly.
All right.
And I will, there we are, and I will formally welcome all of you to our annual meeting and introduce myself. And I see that we have a nice group of people on board. And I want to officially thank Holly Wall for being able to put this virtual meeting together. Otherwise, we would not be talking with each other, and obviously we won't be seeing each other until after this virus thing gets over with, which I hope is soon, and I hope we can do something about it as far as a get-together. So let's talk about our missions. As you well know, that's the next slide. As you well know, our missions are coming up here.
All right, John, for some reason, my computer's delayed and it's
okay.
Responding quickly to me.
The wonderful world of computers. Okay. As you can see on the slide that's up there, our primary mission is to put oysters spat on shell into the bay. We host them, as you well know, from September around to about June or so under the trail on Fishing Creek. And we have been doing that now for a total of 10 years. And our parallel missions, which are equally important to us, but not necessarily equally important to the restoration of the bay, but equally important are the education of our youth and the outreach to our community. So let's talk about our accomplishments now. And that'd be the next slide, Holly. Our accomplishments. How you doing, Holly?
I am. It's for some reason it's not moving quickly for me, and I'm not sure why, John. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. You know why that is? It's because John Bacon's on board.
Give me 1 second. Let me see here.
Oh, there's Jay drinking.
It's a little early, but why not drink, John?
Trying to figure out what's going on here. Just give me 1 second.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, it looks like it's going to be a gorgeous day today. And when this meeting is all over, I'm going to go sit out on my deck. Here we go. Here we go. The accomplishments of this organization are that we are 10 years old. And many of you can remember when we were 5 years old, I gave to everybody a 5-year mug. Well, I have the ability to get 10-year mugs, but apparently this computer cannot teleport a mug to your house. So we'll have to wait until we can physically get together and pass out the 10-year mugs, because I think it's important that we do this. Okay, and we have put in over those 10 years over 1 million oysters, juveniles in the bay. And what we are seeing out there is a significant reproduction of those oysters out there, forming new oysters, and our reef looked really, the last time we checked on our reef, it looked really good, having a mixture of young and new oysters. I calculated up as a result at the end of the last bunch of field trips that we had hosted 6,414 Calvert County 5th grade students. And that is a 5th grade student all the way from the 5th grade students we started with when we were an organization without using chest packs have now graduated from high school and are sophomores in college, which is unbelievable. And I have gotten response back from several of them that they have gone into the environmental field, which is very, very rewarding. We'd also obviously partner with the MGO program and have partnered with them to get our oysters for a long time. We are the one MGO organization, and there are 26 of us now around the bay who have a super education program besides just putting oysters in the bay twice a year. So let's talk about the information now from DNR, which would be the next slide. Here we go. Hello, Ryan. How are you doing? We're getting more people on board as we go through this discussion. Here we come. From DNR, the oysters, let's talk a little bit about last year. The oysters were available last year. If you remember, in 2019, there were no oysters available at all because of the super water in the spring wiped out the ability for Horn Point to grow oyster larvae. Last year, however, we got oysters from the DNR, and we got 190 bags total, which we decided to, and I talked briefly about it before, we decided to plant them directly to the old rock reef rather than getting 40 or 50 people together to try and get them under the trail. And several of us, including I see Sue was on board for that time, several of us opened up the oyster bags and put them in the tubs and loaded them onto the boat, and Jay took them out and dumped them into the reef, and that's the way it was last year. We also continued to send oysters to our friends at the Navy, and that was they took their oysters and they did plant them in their cages at the Navy base right by the bridge there, and then they have taken them out in June and put them on the reef out in the bay. In 2020, we were able to help a group of individuals from Herring Bay start their program, and we made sure that they got a bunch of oysters to plant directly into Herring Bay as we brought our oysters in September. So what I found out is that the group from Herring Bay is much like CBOCS was in the early days. They are not overly, but they're very enthusiastic. And they have graduated now so that they are a full-blown member of the oyster program with MGO. So we don't have to worry about them anymore. So the next thing said we put 100 bags of oysters that went directly to the bay, and we've talked about that. And the next one is a slide showing the emptying of the tubs to the bay. And there's Jay with his boat. And we thank Jay very much for being able to take the boat out there on a regular basis. Because the little tiny boat that we have from the town just isn't able to handle all those big boxes and go out there on a choppy day. So the next one we'll talk about, we recently been out and we have dredged the bay for reef for samples, and those samples will show up in a few seconds here. And we also have been deploying reef balls, which we are getting from the Coastal Conservation Association. Is that right, Jay? I think that's right. From Coastal Conservation Association.
Sorry, I was muted, John, but that is right.
That the Coastal Conservation Association has been working with schools from around the state to actually make reef balls in schools, and then they get the reef balls, and one of their problems is they don't have enough reefs that are approved by the federal government to deploy these reef balls. So they had some spare reef balls around, so they've been delivering them, or Jay's been picking them up, I don't know which, to our place, and we have been working hard to finish off the reef balls on the Old Rock Reef as we expand the reef because of more oysters. So here's a picture of the dredge that we bought, and orange, I guess that's an orange fence that Jay added to it, and we went down on the Old Rock Reef and we scooped up oysters. First 2 or 3 times we scooped, we weren't in the right place, but boy, when we finally found the right place, you can see there's a whole bucket full of oysters. And those oysters that you see on this current slide are what we think were oysters in the 6, 7 year and 8 range, and they are huge. The one on the very right-hand side of that slide is a singular one, and that's at least 5 inches in diameter. The ones on the left side are multiples, and they are several inches in diameter. But you can also see a whole lot of mussels that have clumped onto the oyster itself. And on the left picture, you can see on the very right-hand side of the left picture, a little tiny oyster that's probably 2 or 3 years old that has been reproduced from our oysters out there. And the next slide will show the fact that we have taken the reef balls from the Coastal Conservation, put them on a special platform on the back of the boat, and take them out and just throw them in and see what's happening. So what I'd like to do is tell you about an interesting story that we have happened in this past year. In the fall of 2013, a reef ball was deployed by DNR. That was the 3rd reef ball that we had out there. The other I'm sorry, buoy. I'm sorry, that was the third buoy that we had planted out there. The first two got wiped away in the first storm that came by. They were the little tiny ones. But this was a great big one. And I had the opportunity to go with a guy from the DNR and out there. And anyway, go back one. And anyway, we deployed it. In the winter of 2014, that buoy broke away from the reef. So, okay, at that point, we decided not to put any more reef buoys out there because all that did was advertise where the reef was for potential poachers. Long about last December, Larry Ringgold called me up and said, John, there's a buoy that I see on the rocks in North Beach. And I thought, yeah, good deal, Bear. He said, no, I think it's one of our buoys. So we went over there and we retrieved the buoy. And my God, it was a buoy from 2013 that had been floating around in this bay for 6 years until it finally ended up on the beach on the rocks at North Beach. Next slide. And you can see this is the buoy that was sitting out there in 2013. And this is the buoy on the right-hand slide that was sitting on the rocks. And one more, please, Holly. So Jay picked it up and brought it over to my house. And I decided I'm not going to give it back to DNR. So it's now the 8717 Oyster Sanctuary. And you can figure out where 8717 is. That's at my house. And it looks pretty nice. So
they're going to be at your house this evening, John.
What's that?
I said DNR will be knocking on your door this evening. Just letting you know.
That's okay. We'll set up the alarm system. Okay, another interesting story. We have been receiving our big rotating cages from other MGO groups that tried them and they didn't work in their areas, so they have been sending them to us. And remember, when we first started out this program, those rotating cages cost $500 each. So we have received a number of rotating cages from several of the other MGO organizations. In the fall of 2019, one of these organizations put together a special set of oyster floats that are similar to the ones that the Japanese use. And they said, would you put them under the trail? And we said, sure, why not? Let's see what they're doing under the trail. Well, I basically forgot all about them until they called me up the other day, or they sent me an email a few weeks back. And they said, John, what's happened to our oyster floats that are under the trail? And I thought to myself, boy, I really don't know. But I recovered. I said, they're doing just fine, you guys, though. Come over and see them. So based on that, we'll look at the next slide. And we went up to the trail, and there they were on the very left picture. They were there under the trail, just where we had left them 18 months ago. And so we said, well, let's get the boat out and go get them, and we'll pull them up. And Jay said, no. So Jay climbs down the Fishing Creek Trail and pulls up the oyster floats. And we get them up onto the deck, and you can see floats with oysters hooked onto each float, and the oysters are in bags. Actually, they're in strings that have been wound around a bunch of oysters. And that's pretty interesting because they grew very nicely, and you can see on the right-hand slide that they are of interest, of good size. Those same people are coming over here next week because we just took the oysters and we housed them in a couple of cages underneath one of the piers at my house. So we're going to show them the oysters, and then we're going to say, what do you want to do with them? So let's go to the next slide, please. And that would be the slide of what we did last year. Fortunately, we were able to get the community mural done before the COVID hit. We had students from both beach, and that year we had new students from Windy Hill come, and they painted 3 murals with a whole lot of sea life on them. The sea life was painted on the beach murals, and marsh life was painted on the murals from Windy Hill. Take a look at the next slide. There's the murals from beach, and you can see the hundreds and hundreds of little critters. And the next slide is the mural from Windy Hill, and you can see the hundreds of little critters that now formed in a marsh area. So they were more than just the sea life critters. Go ahead. So our 5th grade trips obviously were canceled for last year. However, what happened in October, Chesapeake got a number of teachers from the 5th grades to come over and basically do a mini field trip, which they videotaped. Now remember, the schools were operating on a non-in-class operation, so that they were still able to teach their oyster module via virtual things. So they taught the oyster module via virtual things, and they added these videos of the teachers doing the field trip. I thought was pretty darn interesting, that's for sure. So all of a sudden, here's what we did for the field trips, and you can see that the total is 6,000, now 274 when you add the 13 teachers that we are. So the trail, let's go to the next slide. The trail, remember now that we have given most of the trail work up to the green team, as far as the gardens are concerned and things like that up by Richfield Station. But we have continued to be interested in the ospreys. The camera of last year was not available, and I understand that it's not available again this year. There's a program to redo a lot of the cameras around the town, and it'll get to the camera on the osprey platform in the very near future. So go to the next one. This is what's going on as far as 2021 is concerned. This is our annual meeting for sure, and I still try and report to the town council every month some interesting facts about CBOCS. And it's been difficult this year to report a new interesting fact each month because of the virus. So let's go on. Here's what we need to do, guys. Our mission for this year, our involvements for this year, we're going to move the oysters in September. They're coming in on Friday, the 10th of October. I don't know whether we're going to move the oysters to the bay or whether we're going to move them to the trail. It will basically depend upon the restrictions that we have from the COVID. My guess is that we will do what we did last year, and we will take them directly to the bay. This is a little unfortunate as far as the oysters are concerned, because the survivability rate of directly moving young spat to the bay is probably less than having us protect them for 9 months in the cages, but that's the way life has to be right now. Our education program, here it is. Hopefully, we're going to be able to participate like we have in the past 7 years with chest packs. And those would be school days from September to November. The program starts at 8 o'clock in the morning when we take out all of the equipment which we store in the storeroom behind the town hall, and we help set it all up at the various stations along the trail. At that point, the school kids come, and the natural resources people from the county come and work the program. We help them do just that. And we also then have to put things away. This requires at least 4 people. And I would try and hope that we can find those 4 people in the group that we have now. Ron and I used to do it by ourselves, and then we got extra help. Sue helped us. Mike Finn helped us. Megan Blake helped us. Liz Orlandi helped us, and others. So I want to see if we can really do this. And that only predicates on the fact that we're going to do this and that schools will be there. The other thing that can happen this year is that, as you may or may not know, Bobby Abner has put in an oyster hatchery at the end of the, wherever his boats are located, at the very end of that. This oyster hatchery takes larvae from the Horn Point hatchery and sprinkles them onto cages which have shells, and they become spat on shell. This is the one portion of the oyster cycle that has been missing from our organization for a long time. I talked with Bobby yesterday, and he said June 5th is iffy as to whether or not they're going to get their oysters on that day. But I will get an email out to everybody. Then you're welcome to come to the last part of Abner's boatyard there and see these oysters being put in, these larvae being put in and mixed with those shells. We're also going to take 4 of our MGO cages and put them in so that we have MGO oysters spat on shell ready for the fall school trips. Okay, next one. The next one says that we've been asked to participate, as well as the Green Team is asked to participate with the Northeast Community Center on programs that are being developed. And we're just developing those right now. We've also been asked to participate with Jefferson Patterson Park, which is down on the other side of the county, to set up an oyster exhibit with them. We obviously need to continue with our trail enhancements, and if school starts up again, we need people to help out with the oyster aquarium. And I'm still trying to get our CBOCS literature updated, but that's been a very hard thing. So, okay, here's our calendar for this year. The meeting is now. Our literature update is virtual. Adler's trip is maybe. September 10th is coming in. They're coming in to Marina West. And then September, October, and November, we have the field trips. Last slide. Your ideas, your interesting stories, and your projects, and your comments. And I'm listening now. So unmute and say something. Please.
John, you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. First, just like you did, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Ron Draper. And just like you, I got to hear a lot of those stories and the insight, and he was a pretty incredible person. Unless you spent some time with him, because at first I would say he held back on a few stories or how far he could go, but I heard some very interesting things. He was a very interesting man, and just like you, is giving of all of his time. And if there were more people like him, the world would be a better place. He was truly you met him and we spent many hours together, so you understand, but he was just truly an incredible person. So I wanted to say that. Second of all, so due to the COVID, David Sawarski with CCA, Coastal Conservation Association. We met through one of our meetings, John, and he is in a position because of COVID. All of the schools that made these reef balls had to kind of shut down their program. He had situations where they were sitting on lots and different things. There was no active permits because of the bureaucracy, what it takes to get a permit to deploy them. So he reached out, actually we reached out to him. He said, Jay, this is a win-win. You've got an active permit. I've got to move these things. Let's work together. And he's brought them to us with no effort at all, except us unloading them. And pretty much when I go out in the bay, I deploy a few very strategically. And just so everyone understands in the group, there's a lot of science behind it. We figured out different areas. We have a original reef, and then I went within our permit area and staged some smaller sections that are protected, if you will, to reseed the reef. Eventually, one day, unfortunately, when this reef is established, it's been the history, DNR will lift the sanctuary and they'll harvest the reef. That's happened throughout time. So my goal is to have some seed areas that are protected physically with reef balls that cannot be harvested. So even if eventually one day this reef is lifted, the sanctuary, there will be enough oysters to sustain it. As far as the reef balls per permit, I'm not keeping count, but I know we're always just one short of our total permit. Especially when they're free to us, because we all know the effort that it takes to make them. And I think it's a good part of the educational program, but we can get a lot of them, I'm going to say, for free delivered to us. We're going to use them. I'm going to use them. So I've also worked with Bobby Abner, commercial waterman, with Drew on the worm, who has some advice that's been out there and said, hey, I think if you went to this area, this is where it used to be very good. It's a hard bottom. I've been here. I research it. So we're working with the commercial people. I want that to be known. We're not totally anti-commercial. We know there's a value to the oysters, and I think we can work together and benefit everyone. The last thing I'll say real quick, and I say it, John, you know, every time we meet, John's mission statement, first goal is to put oysters on the bay. And I'm going to agree with him that that's what we do. But my number one thing is the education program. If what we're doing to the bay in the big picture is a drop in the bucket, what we're doing to the students and what's going on to be passed on, I think is the bigger goal. So in my opinion, if it was one or the other, oyster program with students or oyster program just putting oysters on the bay, I would go with the students. And you might disagree, but I think we get a bigger bang for our buck teaching the younger generation the value of the bay versus trying to reestablish a oyster reef on our own. So anyway, that's the what I wanted to say and get out there, John. And there's 1,000 stories, and we'll have time to share them. I hope that the students get back out on the trail and we can keep that program going. And Melanie, while I had you, I wanted to check to see if the irrigation system is working at Bayview Hills.
Thank you for asking, Jay. Actually, I'm due to go there this afternoon or tomorrow morning, and I will be sure to get back to you, but I'll get back to you on Monday, so I won't have to bother you tomorrow.
Yeah, no problem. And just so there were some things wrong with it. We just got them all corrected and it should be dialed in. The rain gauge is working now and everything. So if there's any issues at all, please let me know because it's all there. It's just a matter of tweaking it.
Okay, great. Yeah, I have a couple of small plants to plant tomorrow, actually. So I will be sure to do that. And thanks for checking.
Sure.
So that you all know that we're doing our annual survey and collection on the reef in the next couple of weeks. And we do that in order to check the sizes of the oysters and the mortality rate of the oysters. And we report that each year to the DNR. But that's an annual thing that we have as a collection. So any other comments we had? Anybody else? Holly, let's close the meeting down, okay?
Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
Thank you, Holly, very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you, John.
Thank
Have
you,
a great-
everybody.
Have a great
Goodbye,
day,
everyone.
everyone. Yep, bye.